Chad Simmons, director of recruiting, was down in Miami over the weekend because the Under Armour Camp Series made its way to South Florida. And Chad is here bright and early to spill the scoop from the weekend. All right, bring in Chad Simmons. Chad, we are talking intel on top Florida recruits, and we'll start at the top with cornerback Chris Ewal out of Chaminade Madonna High School. Now, we know it's an in-state battle for him. He decommitted from Michigan. They are still recruiting him. But how do you make a read on this? Is Miami right now one of the teams that you consider out in front for Chris Ewald?
I do. I think I said over the weekend, I think he was committed to a Michigan at one time. I like where another sits right now in Miami for Chris Ewald. Obviously, he's a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball over at Chaminade Madonna. They had great success there, last year with Zaquan Patterson, a safety, JoJo Trader, a receiver athlete. Now, they didn't get Jeremiah Smith, and they missed on Cedric Bailey, but he went to NC State. But they're in a good position now, I think, for Ewald. There's a connection there, not just with his position coach. There's been some change there with a guy going to the NFL, Chevis Jackson coming in now to be that DB guy. But the way Crystal Ball does it, I think, really played into this race and why Miami's in a good spot. And the whole staff recruits these players. It's not just position coach, not just defensive guy or offensive guy, but he has the entire staff involved. I think that's what's kind of held this together. And they're a local program. I was told that is not going to let Ewald get away.
All right. Yeah. Last year, they did not land Jeremiah Smith, but they did land Patterson and Trader. So who would you consider the two team in the two spot behind Miami if we're talking this recruitment?
Maybe Florida State. They're in there too, pretty strong. I mean, he's been to Tallahassee. He likes Pat Surtain, obviously from the South Florida area, coached at American Heritage just a few years ago. I think Florida State is definitely on his radar. I mean, he's got an OB to Georgia, an out-of-state school. They've come down. He knew T-Rob from Alabama. His time has always had Georgia on his radar. But I think the one that everybody, again, is chasing is Miami, with Florida State probably being number 2 right now.
All right, and at the camp that you were at, wide receiver Cortez Mills was the on-3 top performer. He's out of Homestead High School, and like I said, the dead period ends today, so he will be visiting Miami. Are they the favorite here right now for Mills early on?
Yeah, Mills, he's really changed, his story, his narrative. Each time we talk over the last, I've seen him, I think, 3 times in the last maybe 2 months, and at different times, different schools have been mentioned more by him as the key guys in the race. And I'd say a pretty consistent one is Miami, him going back there this weekend. I mean, he's mentioned some out-of-state schools too, but him going to Miami today, obviously that shows him that Miami is not wasting any time getting him back on campus, getting more face time with him. He has a great connection with Kevin Beard. And he really credit, again, the whole staff, not just connecting with him, but his parents, his family, his mom, his dad, and not just recruiting him, but getting to know him as a person. So, yes, he's a Homestead kid down below the University of Miami going towards the Florida Keys. And I think Miami really wants to work hard to keep him home. But some other schools are in the mix. Florida, an in-state school, he likes them a lot. It has an OV there set. Then you got schools like LSU and Clemson, I think, will factor into this race as well. But Miami has positioned themselves well early in March.
All right, now we're going to move on to running back Byron Lewis. He's at American Heritage. Really impressive prospect, 6 foot, 208 pounds. Now, Ohio State is working hard on Lewis, but is he leaning toward maybe an in-state school?
Look, I think at different times, again, here, I would say different schools have been trending, but a consistent name has always been going back. It's like a Miami show. The University of Miami doing a great job there recruiting him. And they've done a good job the last couple of years going against the school you mentioned, like Ohio State. They flipped Mark Fletcher. They flipped Jordan Lyle this last cycle from Ohio State and kept them home. I think Lewis has kind of emerged as that guy in the 305. They want to keep home in South Florida, a lot like a Mark Fletcher, a big back, runs hard downhill. But he's mentioned, Ohio State, Tony Alford, great relationship there. He wants to get back to Columbus soon. He'll be at Florida State and Miami both the month of March. Florida State's coming on strong. They're making this race a little bit tighter, I think, than people thought from a Seminole perspective at one time. And then you have Alabama. They've always been in this. He's been talking to the new staff some as well. So I think those are the four schools right now I hear the most about out of state: Alabama, Ohio State, and then in-state, Florida State and Miami.
All right. Stay at American Heritage High School for safety Gregory Thomas. He goes 6'2", 185 pounds, and he's been trending heavily to Florida State. Can the Noles lock this recruitment down, or does he end up taking spring, summer visits and maybe another competitor gets involved here?
Yeah, I mean, we'll shift from giving Miami all the love over to Florida State, their big in-state rival. I like where Florida State's at for Gregory Thomas. I mean, I think nobody's recruiting him like Florida State. It's that simple. We talked about Pat Surtain being from American Heritage. He was actually the head coach Thomas's freshman year as he was coming out. He went to the collegiate game. And so there's a connection to American Heritage, connection to Pat Surtain. And he's mentioned nowhere yet. He hasn't been a lot of places, but nowhere yet has made him feel at home like Florida State, from the staff, the people, just the culture there in Tallahassee. He's been to Miami. They're involved, but he's still kind of really early in getting out to see other places. He wants to see LSU this weekend. He wants to see Penn State maybe in the spring, but there's no doubt about it. Florida State is setting the pace in this race with Gregory Thomas.
Yeah, they're definitely setting the pace, but, you know, like you said, if he gets out on the road, he visits an LSU, he goes to see some of these places, it could get interesting. All right, let's head to the other coast of Florida. Port Charlotte High School is where Myon Charles is at. 6'5", 300-pound defensive lineman, top 150 prospect, and he's trending to Miami, but UF is right there as well. How do you read this battle?
Yeah, UF and Florida State and Miami, all three in-state schools are heavily in the mix. He's been to all three schools numerous times, and each school wants to get him back on campus this spring and hopefully this summer for OVs or even into the fall if he takes it that far as well. But I think right now it's two schools. You know, I think it's Miami and Florida State, and according to a source, and even I think Myron himself hinted at it this weekend during some interviews, that FSU may have a slight edge in this recruitment. But Miami, I feel like, and I'm told by someone close, that Miami feels pretty confident, at least in the top two, if not the favorite and the leader for Myon Charles. But he's been to Florida State a little bit more. He loves Odell Haggins, who has been there, it seems like, 30-plus years, forever at Florida State. He likes the continuity of that staff. He likes what Florida State did on the field this past season, and kind of just the stability he's mentioned to me of the program, where Norvell just signed a new deal to lock him in for a long time at Florida State. But then you have Miami, a little closer to home. He'll probably take multiple trips there, and I think right now Florida State and Miami kind of lead the way.
Yeah. All right, we're going to round it out with another defensive lineman. He goes 6'2", 270. I'm talking about Jarquez Carter out of Newberry, Florida. Busy spring with visits coming. Where do things stand with him? Because I know interest is picking up.
Yeah, I think he's somewhere in that 40 offer range. Kind of went from maybe a quiet name in Newberry, Florida, to a big national name over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and he's coveted. I think obviously he's taking these trips out of state, but I think the first trip starts with in-state school Miami this week. But I think end of the day, he just decides to stay home. So does he go to Miami? Does he go to Florida State, Florida? He mentions UCF in that group as well. He's been there numerous times. I think if there is a school or two right now I like is Miami and Florida. He's very close to both staffs. There's been some changeover at Florida. But he really loves Napier, direction of the program. Then you have Joe Salave at Miami. He'll be back there this week. He loves Jason Taylor, thinking about, even though he doesn't play the edge position, but just kind of getting the knowledge of an NFL Hall of Famer, Jason Taylor. I think Miami and Florida are the two, but I think when all said and done, he's going to give each in-state school a hard look, including Florida State and UCF, and then make that decision.
All right, Chad. Well, appreciate you dropping by with the Under Armour Camp Series intel. He wrote an insider piece on on3.com. Go check that out. There's about twice as many names as we just covered in there. These, I thought, though, were some of the most important. So, Chad, I know it's early on Monday. You got to go catch a flight back home. Appreciate you stopping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thank you, Josh. Anytime.
Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed that, go check out the hundreds of videos that we have on this channel, and also do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel.